For many years now and under numerous coaches, Spurs have mostly played a 4-3-3 formation, with the three midfielders being your stereotypical number 6, number 8 and number 10. So when Spurs were first linked with Mateus Fernandes and Sandro Tonali in the same window, I have to be honest, I didn't get it. But now I've had time to think about it, I'm starting to think that Roberto De Zerbi has something much more sophisticated in mind than I first realised. And in fact, if I'm right about De Zerbi's strategy, it's absolute genius in several different ways. When you first saw the title of this video, you probably thought to yourself, what on earth is this guy on about? But let me run you through the various factors that have led me to this conclusion, and then you guys can let me know what you think in the comments. If you'd like to skip ahead to any sections, there's timestamps in the description below. Otherwise, let's get started. After Yves Bissouma was allowed to leave the club by mutual consent, and still with no sign that we're going to pursue a permanent deal for João Palhinha, you'd think that we start to see some transfer links to some bona fide, stereotypical defensive midfielders, now that the focus has shifted from defence recruitment into midfield recruitment. After all, beginning the season with no specialist defensive midfielders would be absolute madness, right? However, apart from some really light touch rumours surrounding Adam Walton, the only two players that there seems to be real concrete interest in are Sandro Tonali and Mateus Fernandes, neither of which are stereotypical defensive midfielders. For me, Fernandes is a hybrid of an 8 and a 10, technically very good, able to keep the ball in the middle of the park, but also possessing that flair, that power, that dribbling ability to go past people and make things happen. Tonali is more of a hybrid of a 6 and an 8, able to play equally as effectively as the defensive midfielder or the box-to-box midfielder, and he's also got a great range of passing. And if you look at the midfield players we've already got at the club, Bentancur, Gallagher, Archie Gray, they're similarly as flexible, but in slightly different ways. Bentancur really is a number 8, but he's able to play at number 6 as well. Remember last year in our run to the Europa League final, he was absolutely outstanding in the defensive midfield position, albeit against weaker opposition. And Gallagher can play at both 8 and 10, but he's more of a high energy, high pressing player. And there's less emphasis on the technical side of his game, which to be fair is fairly mediocre. Archie Gray, although he's still developing, can also play at number 6 and number 8. And so when you put that group of players together, consider their attributes and how it could all fit together, this is, for me, where it gets really exciting. Targeting both Tonali and Fernandes on top of what we've already got suggests to me that De Zerbi may be looking to move towards that really beautiful, fluid, rotational style PSG midfield. A midfield where the three players have kind of loosely designated roles, but they all do a bit of everything and rotate really nicely. Let's not forget that De Zerbi spent 18 months as manager of Marseille, during which time he would have got up close and personal to that really amazing PSG team. And after he lost to them in the French FA Cup final, he came out with this quote. He stated to the press, PSG are the best team in Europe and the one that has played the best football over the last year and a half. But today, we deserve to win. The fact that he seems to be moving away from the more traditional defensive midfielders suggests to me that he's going to implement that fluid style. And we know that he's a very innovative, forward-thinking manager who's always looking for new and imaginative ways to play the game. He also said this in his post-season interview on the club's YouTube channel. And again, this suggests to me that he's got really big plans for next season.
You said at the beginning you had to limit your messaging in terms of the things that players would take on board. Are you excited to share your philosophy and what you want to bring to this team on the training field with more time?
Yes, but at the end I think I gave a lot of details and ideas. No, I was not so strong, because I thought maybe to go too strong is like lose the energy, no? Because you can win the game with the style, but first of all you need the spirit, the attitude, the behavior, and the next season I'm ready to go stronger.
Add that to the fact we now have 4 really attack-minded fullbacks, and I think you can see that he's aiming for that PSG-inspired style. In terms of the various systems we could play if we did sign Tonali and Fernandes, again, this is where it gets really exciting and proves what shrewd signings these two guys would be. When you add James Maddison into the mix, there's so many options that we could use depending on the scenario. Here's 3 examples, and I've got no doubt that De Zerbi has got even more in mind. System 1 could be a balanced system with Tonali and Bentancur playing that really nice modern double pivot. And to be fair, Tonali already plays this with Bruno Guimaraes up at Newcastle, and he really excels in that role. In that system, we'd really be able to control the pace and the tempo of a game, and depending on the opposition, we could use Fernandes or Maddison for the number 10. That system would be perfect against like hard running but limited opposition, for example, because we could just pop the ball around them and use our technical ability to kill the game. For system 2, we could have that high aggression, high tempo, high pressing style where you'd have Tonali, Fernandes and Conor Gallagher basically running all over the opposition midfield. And that system would be perfect for teams that like to play out from the back but aren't very good at it. Or you could use those options to consolidate a winning position. And you could also use that system just to add some energy later on in the game and see the game out. System 3 could be like the all-out attacking system, where we'd look to just overwhelm the opponent using technical quality, hard running and creativity at number 10. That combination could be Tonali, Fernandes and James Maddison, which would compromise a little bit on defensive solidity to add some extra firepower to the team. And that system would be perfect for when we're chasing a goal or just to overwhelm opponents who weren't as good as us. That's just 3 systems, for example, but the possibilities are absolutely endless. I mentioned in the intro that by targeting Tonali and Fernandes in the same window, that De Zerbi is solving one of our really critical issues. And that's having resilience in the squad when the inevitable injuries occur. It's simple but genius. Let me explain. De Zerbi is essentially using flexibility rather than sheer squad numbers to get around the problem. We've lost Basuma, we're probably not going to sign Polinia, and Lucas Bergval's being sold. So we're 3 midfielders down, but by bringing in just 2 players of higher quality and who are much more flexible in the roles they can play, the squad is much more robust when the injuries occur. This diagram demonstrates the difference really quickly between the midfield cover from last season and what we could potentially have coming into the new season. Because Basuma and Polinia are pretty much one-dimensional traditional defensive midfielders, as soon as there's an injury to a senior number 8, there's an immediate dip in quality for what we have left. Neither Polinia nor Basuma can play number 8, so as soon as you get an injury there, you're effectively down to the bare bones in terms of quality. And if you remember, De Zerbi's first game was away at Sunderland when Bentancur was injured. Now just look at the midfield lineup for that game. That's not good enough to compete in the Premier League. But if we sign Tonali and Fernandes with 1 injury to a senior player at number 8, that's not a problem because we've still got 3 senior players in reserve and Archie Gray is the kind of last resort. That is far more robust. With Fernandes, you've also added quality at number 10. So when the inevitable injuries come for James Maddison and he has his spell on the sidelines, you've still got 2 senior replacements, both of quality. And also, don't forget, we should see the return of Xavi Simons at the kind of back end of the calendar year. And so now you can see with just 2 signings, we've massively improved our resilience against injuries. And if we can claw back 30 to 40 million quid on the sale of Bergval to offset what we're going to spend on Tonali and Fernandes, we're absolutely laughing. Obviously, there's nuance to every argument, and if I had to find a couple of negatives, it's these. As always, no system or no squad shape is ever perfect, and what I've described does rely heavily on Tonali and Bentancur staying fit and injury-free for the large majority of the season, because you could argue we're a little bit lighter at defensive midfield. That's a big if, but don't forget that next season we generally have 1 game a week because we've got no European football, so keeping 1 or both of those 2 fit I think is a distinct possibility. Secondly, if I had another criticism, I don't see much leadership in that midfield group, even if we were to bring in Tonali or Fernandes. You could argue that James Maddison has matured into a leader of sorts a bit later in his career, and you could argue that someone like Conor Gallagher leads by example with his attitude, his work rate, his will to win. But in terms of a player who's willing to give blood, sweat, tears, drive standards, drive the players on the pitch, someone like João Polinia, none of those characters really fit the bill. And lastly, this is a very obvious one, but we actually have to sign these 2 players first. Tonali especially is absolutely crucial if we're going to implement the system I suspect we are. Because to be fair, there's very few midfielders in the Premier League, if any, who can replicate what he does on the pitch. I'd say the closest one to him, if I'm being honest, is Declan Rice over at the Gooners. They're very similar players and perform very similar roles. And so with all things considered, what do you guys think? Do you think De Zerbi is aiming for something close to what I've described, or do you think I'm well wide of the mark? Let me know in the comments section below. And before I finish, there's one more thing that I want to mention with regards to De Zerbi possibly transitioning to that more fluid, modern, PSG-inspired style. As I mentioned earlier, the midfield targets give us a big clue that he is going to pursue this, but also the forward players that he targets will tell us a great deal. We've been hearing that Savinho has been a top target for months now, and if you think about it, he does kind of fit the bill as one of those players that could float along the front line. I mean, he's equally as comfortable playing on the left or off the right. Mateus proved he he can do that as well. I've seen Mohamed Kudus play on the left a few times for West Ham and he was fairly decent. He can also obviously play on the right. He can also play at number 10. And Kulusevski can do it as well, but we may never see him in a Spurs shirt again. I think that De Zerbi is going to keep one of Richarlison or Dom Solanke just to retain that target man option. And I suspect that Solanke may be the one that gets the nod. But if he does sell Richarlison and then looks to bring in another forward who is more of a floating player, someone that can play all along the front line, much in the mould of Ousmane Dembele at PSG, then at that point, I think we can say with real certainty that that's what he's going for, that fluid, modern style. And at the end of the day, whatever De Zerbi has in mind, I trust him implicitly, and I'm really excited for the new season. I don't know about you guys, but I've got some real optimism for next year. And if what I've described comes to pass, not only will we see some real progress, but we can look forward to some amazing, fluid, attacking football as well. It's going to be great. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys, and I hope to see you on the next one. But for now, thanks for watching.